It's Ethan from Zimmer Labs, and I am back to do a video on crossguards. It's been a while. I apologize. I've been busy upgrading the workshop and installing some new tools, building some new stations. It's just been a lot of work, and I haven't done a whole lot of sabering for the last month, but I have had the opportunity to be involved in the testing on the new Proffieboards that Fredrik has made, and they're awesome. Let's just get that out there right now. They're fantastic. It's a great board. It's exactly the same as the Teensysaber V3, but with more ability to do stuff. So anything the Teensysaber can do, the Proffieboard can do. It can just do more of it. We'll get into that in a bit, but basically the Proffieboard is ideal if you're doing a really souped up crossguard. It's kind of pointless to use a Proffieboard if you're just doing a Graflex or something like that, unless it's got a whole lot of stuff going on. But I'll get into that in more detail later. But I thought this would be a good chance to kind of show you guys all the options that are out there, because right now it just so happens that I have kind of all the options on my bench in my workshop, so what better opportunity to kind of show you guys side by side. So this guy, we'll start here. This is the Phoenix props that I built for David. I was just waiting for the very last bit to come in the mail, and that was these 3 Nylox mini push-pin fasteners. If you guys saw the video for this guy, the last update video I did on this one, basically the only thing that I wasn't super sold on, not the hugest fan of, was the design where there are 3 screws that hold this section of the hilt onto this section, and you have to remove them to access the crystal chamber inside. And they're small, with really small but really fine threads, so the chances are you're gonna either lose one or just screw up the threads and bore it out or whatever. Plus, if you want to show off the crystal chamber at a con, or if you just want to take it off and check it out, it's really a hassle to take off the 3 screws. So my thought was to use push pins like you'll see in a car, but these are tiny, so I wasn't sure if they existed. But little research, and I found these guys, and they exist for sure. Here is what I ended up finding and using, and they're perfect. They quite literally just push right in, and they're strong, they're incredibly tight, and they hold on rock solid. So David, I hope you like those. Hope they work for you, but obviously I'm going to include your screws too. Here is the actual pin itself, so you guys can see it. It's just a little small black super hard nylon pin that's got some ridges to keep it held in place, and all you do is just push it in and pull it back out. So these are great. These are a perfect little solution for the Phoenix props screw concern that I had. There's one here, one here, one here, and you could pull them out with your fingers, but I like to use tweezers just because it's much easier to grab onto them. But they just pop in and out like that. But they're not going to go anywhere, and they're not going to fall out, and they are rugged. David, I'm including obviously the 3 that are in there, an additional set of 3 in case you lose one or break one, plus the 3 screws that came with it. So you should be all set for the foreseeable future with those. Let's get into the other options and the saber that we're here to really show off today. This guy right here. This is the new Korbanth version 2 crossguard, and I think it's my favorite of all the options out there. There's a whole bunch of different versions of this. This is kind of the middle of the road. You can get this guy, which is just totally brand new, mint condition, powder coated black, no weathering, no burning effect or burnt effect on the quillions. I think this is my favorite personally. This is, you know, when I think of Kylo's saber, or if I were Kylo, what I'd want my saber to be, it's this. I really don't like this effect of heat-stained side quillions. I mean, I get it, I understand the point of it, but if these are stained, then why isn't this? I mean, this should be heat-stained too, because there's even more heat coming out of this guy than there are this guy's. And then when you think of the saber, this is the iconic picture that I think of when I think of Kylo Ren. Like, this is the best picture of his saber from the movies, the most close-up, zoomed in. And if you take a look at that guy looks exactly like that guy, right? Like, there's no heat discoloration, there's no weathering on any of the little bits or whatever. Also, if you look closely, the belt clip here is coming off. Evidently Kylo hadn't screwed the screw down very well, but either way, like that right there, that's a dead ringer. So first of all, nice job by Korbanth on this, because this is a really nice design. Second of all, that's kind of my argument for why I prefer this look. But you know what, there's a million looks and everybody's entitled to their own opinion and everybody's taste is different, so the good news is you can get it done in any way you want. So this is the middle of the road, like I said. There's no burning effects, no heat stains on here, but there is a lot of weathering going on where the surface finish has been beat up by, you know, obviously destroying people, chopping heads off, killing emperors, etc. And then the third version you can get looks a bit like this guy. Obviously this is not the Korbanth, and this is a really fancy custom paint job. God, I want to say done by EFX, but it might be Artifacts. Either way, but you can get this paint job done on the Korbanth too. And it'll look just like this guy, but with the heat stains also. And then, the other option, if you can find one, is this guy. This is the version 1. And this one, while it is really simple, it's really basic, it's got a lot of flaws. It's not real accurate as far as that goes, but I love the size. This guy is, I think, the perfect actual size in hand. If you put these guys side by side, you see it's significantly smaller. But this guy, all of the other guys, they're a bit big, to be perfectly honest. They're not too big, and it's a big saber in the movie, but personally I like my sabers to be a little bit smaller. I just feel like these are more badass, more compact, and you know, if I were smiting some Jedis or taking over the world, I'd want to have something a little more handy and compact to do that with. But so these are your other options. And a big thanks to Kyle Miller from eBay for this guy. I picked this up from Kyle, and it was a great price, and I appreciate it, so thank you, Kyle. These are your options if you guys are interested in doing a crossguard. The Phoenix Props is by far the most expensive hilt. Then second place is the Korbanth version 2. These are not bad at all. I want to say they're around 250 each. This guy, if you can find it, sells anywhere from 200 to 400, based on the fact that it's just hard to find, because these are an old run that he did that it's not getting made anymore. There is no more stock of it. So if you're finding one of these, it's from somebody who bought one before. So these can be a bit harder to find and a bit more expensive, but they're out there. Let's dive into this guy and show you guys what this is all about. This was a ton of work, an absolute ton of work. I had completely built it using a Teensysaber, and then when Fredrik sent me the new Proffieboards, I thought this would be the perfect application to really test the Proffieboard and see what it could do. So I stripped this down, swapped out the card, and rebuilt it with the Proffieboard. And it took me, I don't know, it took me 3 builds to get it right the first time with the Teensysaber. And then when I put the Proffieboard in there, it took me 4 builds to get it right. Mostly because this is a completely custom build top to bottom. There's no Shapeways printed chassis or anything like that in this guy. So this was kind of a learning experience from top to bottom. Everything about this I had to kind of just make it up as I went, and the final product is great and I'm super happy with it, but definitely it was a ton of work. The most work I've put into any saber in a year at least. So those of you guys who are thinking about building one of these, definitely go for it. It's awesome, and it's definitely a good challenge, but just be aware that this is gonna be a hard build, not just because of any inherent issue with the hilts or anything like that, but because it's basically like you're building 3 lightsabers. You got 3 blades, you got to cram everything in there, and it doesn't sound like that's all that difficult, but believe me when I say having the 3 blades, just somehow or other, it ends up making life way more difficult than it should be. But this guy is done, and super happy with how it came out. Up top, we've got pogo pin style connection, as you can see in there. On the sides as well. These sides I bored out with my mill. As you can tell from this guy on the left, this is, like I said, this is an untouched hilt. Nothing's been done to this except I did paint these little greebles here. But as you can see, if you can compare these two, that's a 3/4 hole, and it's not real well centered. And what I did was I bored this out to 7/8 so that the side blades could be 7/8 bigger string blades. Nobody really wants to work with 3/4 inch string blades. It's a hassle. And the fact that this one is off center versus this one is centered, it's not something I really wanted to do. So if you're doing a Korbanth, you may end up having to bore these out. The next thing you have to figure out is where do you want to put the auxiliary button. Korbanth gives you this guy right here. That's your main button, and it's just a round metal greeble that goes into a round hole that's right here. But there is no real obvious place for an auxiliary button. With the Phoenix Props one, there's an obvious place for the auxiliary button, and that is right up in this little crack, this little cutout. But with the Korbanth version of it, that little cutout does not have, the piece behind it doesn't have any real room to add a switch into there. So you could do it, but it would take a fair amount of work hollowing out behind there. So what I did was I put the auxiliary switch right here directly beneath the power button. And what I did was I used this is a cabinet support pin. You know when you guys buy like a cabinet or a TV stand or whatever, the inside will have shelves and there will be little holes where you can put little metal pins so you can move the shelves up and down depending on where you want it. That's what I mean by a cabinet shelf support pin. So that's what that is. On the back side of it, it's got a flat, wide portion which keeps it from coming out. It won't fall out the hole because the back side is wider. So that hits the auxiliary button, which is right beneath it. And the best part is that it's a black metal, I don't know if it's iron or steel, but it's a nice weathered looking black metal already. So I didn't have to worry about the finish on this. It totally matches the character of the saber as it stands already, and it's really easy to hit. It's in a great spot because it's right where your thumb's going to be anyways. You can turn it on and then hit your auxiliary button if you need it right away. It's just super handy. So that's how I handled that guy. Next up, one of my favorite parts about this hilt is that Korbanth gives you the opportunity to get creative with the electronics part. As you can see here, there's just 3 empty sockets here. And then down here in the pommel, there's just some flat, empty gray plastic piece. Korbanth supplies little greebles that kind of go in there to add some details, but no one says that you actually have to use those. And so I started out using them and really was not terribly impressed with the overall look of it. So I decided to go with real circuit boards down here and up here. And the idea was something that I wanted to do. It's kind of a challenge that I wanted to pose to myself, was to make all the circuit boards that I put into this actually functional parts of the saber. Because at the end of the day, Kylo Ren's saber, the circuitry you can see, theoretically is a functional part of his saber. It's not just in there for decoration to make it look cool. It's part of the saber. So if you look in here, you'll find that everything is a functional part of this saber build. This guy right here is a microprocessor, and that is actually your main kill switch. So you just stick a finger in there and then slide it up. Turns on. Slide it back down to turn it off. Next up, you'll see a strip of Neopixels. This is your battery protection circuit PCB here. Neopixels again. Here is the one single lone fake plastic greeble is that side. Neopixels again. So basically 99.9% of this guy is all actual functional electronics in there. Up top, we have again more electronics. These guys, unfortunately, I couldn't think of anything else to put in here that would be functional. See, so these are just for looks, but legit electronics, with this main red wire soldered to it as if it were really running into here and running off the board. And then as you can see, there's a few small blue wires that are also soldered in, along with some heavy-duty copper wires that are soldered in, because as you can see from the Phoenix props guy, there is this theme of having some blue wiring visible inside of this cutout. So I wanted to stick with that and be true to the overall concept of having some visible blue wiring in there. But rather than just have some wires running through it, say, hey, I'm some wires I'm running through, I actually soldered them into the board so that they were appearing to do something. Not really doing anything, but then I did this little brass touch here instead of the 2 black solid plastic greebles that come with it. That's just personal preference. This is what comes with it right here, and they are, like I said, they're just solid plastic little lumps. I don't know what they're supposed to be or what they're for, but as you'll see later, I wanted to have something with some shine through effect, because what I did was, this cutout section, as far as I know, is battle damage. I'm pretty sure that's what it's supposed to be. And so when you have a battle damaged saber and there's some damage right above some electronics, you're obviously going to have some occasional sparking going on. So using some Neopixels, I did that. I added some spark inside of here. So you'll see when I fire it up, there's some sparking going on that's coming out of this, and you also see it through these guys, which is nice. It gives it a nice element of realism. Next up, the crystal reveal on this guy, probably my favorite part. Korbanth, great job. He used magnets to make this piece removable, as well as the piece underneath it. Simple as that. Now, this guy, the one thing that I was not huge on with this is that this piece, as you can see, it's a bit loose. It's on there pretty well, but it's, you know, if you really whip it, that piece might fall off. And obviously that's not acceptable. So what I did was I added some additional magnets myself. You can see them here. There's 2 significantly larger heavy-duty N52 magnets on the side that add an extra amount of grab, or, you know, firmness to the grip associated with this part. So now it's not moving. That's why also this section had to be machined down a bit on the sides to make that fit. What I also did was I took the grinder, the flex shaft, to this part and just kind of weathered it up a bit. Show you guys what it looked like beforehand. The left side is what it looks like when you get it. The right side is after some steel wool, basically, steel wool wheels. This is like a mirror chrome finish, and if that's what you're looking for, great, awesome, nothing wrong with that. But that was just too shiny and pretty for me. I feel like the saber is kind of beat, kind of evil, kind of been around the block. So I took the steel wool wheels to it and kind of exposed some of the brass that's behind it. The overall look now is kind of like a pewter, and I think it looks great. Now, we get to the inside. This is your crystal reveal, and this part came out really, really well. This is a, well, I don't know what it is. It's a quartz crystal that I found at the crystal shop, and it was just clear. I used some red dye to dye it red, and when I did that, there's all these cracks in this crystal that I didn't realize were even in it, but they sucked the red dye up into it. So when I decided I didn't want the red dye on there because it messed with the color too much, I cleaned it off, only to find that the red dye had gone inside, and now it just looks awesome. It's like this blood red, infected, evil Sith crystal, and it's perfect for Kylo. We have a couple of crystal chamber elements here. These are designed by Dmitry Shtok from Shtok Custom Works, and they are available on Shapeways, and they're perfect for this build because, as you can see, they're the right size, great width, but they're also just kind of clunky and heavy duty and large and evil looking, so they really go with the motif of this saber. I did Neopixel accents in here, then a really, really big Samsung 2170 battery in here, the new 22mm custom saber shop Vico speaker is hiding here, and then the wires run up and down in the 3 polished aluminum tubes that are behind the crystal, so you don't see any wires. This section here, if you need to, there's 2 hex set screws here and 2 here. If you take those 4 screws out, this whole section will slide off, and it's completely modular. There are pin connectors, header pin connectors there for the switches, here and here for the Quillians, and then another set here for the battle damage. So this guy is a totally modular saber. The whole thing breaks down in a minute and a half, probably, but I don't want to deal with putting it back together right now, so I'm not going to show you that, guys, how that works right now, but I will try to do another video showing that off. But the whole thing just slides off, and the pins just go right into the male and the female versions right here to connect everything up. There's one more thing to show you guys, and then we'll fire it up. The pommel here, I did a new paint job on. It's got kind of a red alloy paint job when you get it, but this guy, it just didn't look right with the overall weathered look of this, so I changed it to a different sort of alloyed paint job, and I think it came out really well. Now, to access the electronics, you just unscrew this guy. It's got a pin right here to keep everything in here steady, lined up, etc., etc. And if you look in there, right down the middle, you'll find your recharge port right there. And that was key because I had to have that available without having to open this guy up too much. Now, here's where the fun starts. This section, totally removable electronics. Again, we have a series of 6 header pins here. If you look inside there, you'll find the other side, the male connector header pins. And right above that, you have your SD card access and your USB access. So everything on the Saber is handy, super easy to access. You can adjust the sound fonts, the programming, change the operating system, update, whatever you need to do on the fly, real easy to access. And then this whole section just slides back in, line those little pin headers up, and connect it back up. This takes a little time to get them lined up right, but once you do, you just push it back in, and you are all good to go. Again, line this pin up with this hole here to make sure that everything is in place. Screw it back in, and once this pommel insert is screwed in tight, snugly, everything is relocked into place because of that. The part of the inside of this pommel pin that goes in locks this into the connector, into the chassis, into the Proffieboard, which is hanging out down here. Let's fire it up and show you guys what she does. Like I said, that is your main kill switch, so slide it up. Booyah. Now, as I said, there are Neopixels down here. There are 3 strips of 3 running in series, so they're not all running together. They're starting at the top of one, going to the bottom, then to the top of the next, and around in a circle. So what I did was I did a color cycle ramping effect down here. So it goes from off to white to red and speeds up and goes around. Now there's a number of other things you can do with these, and I know some people will say Kylo Ren's saber doesn't have lighting effects in the pommel, so what's that about? And yeah, no, you're right, I agree. I just thought it would be kind of cool to have them there, so what I'm going to do with this guy is on 1 or 2 blade presets, I'm going to have these doing wild and crazy things, and then on the rest of the blade presets, they're not going to be on, they're going to be off, and I think probably what I'll do is just have them flash or do some sort of light effect when there's a blaster block or a blade lockup or a clash. So when something jars and there's a big jolt of light up here, you're going to get some effect down here as well, but otherwise not be on, so that way it's not really totally out of whack with the movie, because obviously Kylo Saber doesn't have lights going on down here. But you can do with the Proffieboard or the Teensysaber, you can program these things to do whatever you want, and that is totally the best part about the Teensysaber and the Proffieboard is the total ability to do whatever you want. So that's what's going on down here. On this side, like I said, we've got some battle damage, some electric shocks going on. If you guys saw the video for Eric's Darth Maul, same idea. There was a big chunk missing out of the bottom of his saber, which was battle damage, so I put some basically electronic malfunctioning fire going on down there, and I stole that idea for this and put it up in here, and it really works. It's not really over the top, it's subtle, depending on the angle you're looking at it, but it looks like electronic fire, electronic, malfunctioning, whatever. It's perfect. And like I said, you get shine through in these guys as well. It's kind of hard to see that with the lights on, but I'll show you guys that in a minute. But that was one thing that I was able to do because we had the Proffieboard now versus the Teensysaber. Teensysaber could not do that because the Teensysaber can only do so many things all at once. We've got the main blade, 2 side quillions, these Neopixels down here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 data lines that you're using, and that is all the Teensysaber V3 can handle is 4 data lines. Actually only 3 data lines when you're using